As far as toys are concerned, few are as widely recognized and loved as the LEGO system. It's one of the most successful toy brands in history, and has inspired creativity in children and adults for generations. But what most people don't know is that the LEGO Group once developed a similar product that was not meant for children. The product was Modulex, a system of miniature plastic bricks designed for use in professional settings. While it never gained the same recognition as its more famous cousin, Modulex would go on to have a long and fascinating story. But preserving that story has been a challenge in itself. Only through the efforts of LEGO fans, over the span of many years, have bits and pieces of the history managed to surface. Some of the details are speculated, disputed, or simply unknown to this day. But with some careful study, we can gain a pretty good understanding of what Modulex really was. In 1916, Ole Kurt Christensen opened a woodworking shop in the small community of Billund, Denmark. He became locally known for his handcrafted furniture, and was often hired to build entire houses, barns, and churches. With the arrival of the Great Depression, local farmers could no longer afford Ole's carpentry work, and much of his business dried up. But in the early 1930s, he found new success in crafting high-quality wooden toys. Within a few years, his business was focused solely on toy making. In 1936, he renamed the company to LEGO, adapted from the Danish phrase "leg godt," or play well. As he later recalled, "It wasn't until the day I told myself, you'll either have to drop your old craft or put toys out of your head, that I began to see the long-term consequences. And the decision turned out to be the right one." With the rise of plastics after World War II, Ole made the pivotal decision to purchase his first injection molding machine. Shortly after, in 1949, the company released their first automatic binding bricks. While Ole's company was not the first to produce bricks of this kind, his demand for quality set his brand apart from the rest. 2 years later, the toy was renamed to LEGO Bricks, helping to boost recognition of the company name. In the 1950s, Ole's son, Godfred Kurt Christensen, started playing a bigger role in the company. He envisioned LEGO Bricks not as a standalone product, but as an entire series of toy sets with compatible parts. In 1955, the LEGO System in Play was introduced with the very first town plan sets. Godfred's concept of a LEGO system would become a hallmark of the brand from that point forward. And he would make another key change just a few years later. Similar to their competitors, LEGO bricks were hollow on the underside and didn't stick together very well. Godfred designed a new system of tubes on the underside, which would help the bricks clutch together and allow them to be combined in millions of new ways. This design was patented in 1958 and helped establish the LEGO Group as a true innovator in the toy industry. 6 weeks later, Ole Kurt Christensen passed away, leaving Godfred to carry on the family legacy as the head of the company. In 1962, the LEGO Group released a handful of new sets called Architectural Hobby and Model Building. These were similar to the earlier town plan sets, but were aimed at teenagers and adults with a more serious interest in architectural modeling. This product line was ultimately short-lived, but it was clear that the LEGO Group had a growing interest in architecture. And they would soon double down on this idea in a wholly unexpected way. Much like the barns and homes his father had constructed in years past, Godfred was now working on plans to build a house. He used LEGO bricks to visualize his plans in 3 dimensions, but their unusual proportions didn't scale up to any real-life building materials. Being the visionary that he was, Godfred realized that with some small tweaks, the bricks could be made suitable for professional scale modeling. Architectural firms could use these new bricks to develop realistic scale models of their buildings. Not only would this aid them throughout the design process, but it would allow them to present a clear vision to their clients and investors. As he later recalled, I built a model out of Lego elements and soon discovered that there were great advantages with this type of modeling. I could change as much as I needed, and I could work without scissors, glue, or other tools. On this basis, our engineers started further developing the Lego system. The result was the Modulex system, which has the same properties as Lego, a product with a high level of uniformity and extremely small tolerances. The Modulex brand was launched in 1963. Since it would serve a different purpose from the Lego toy line, it would soon be spun off as its own company. The exact timing of this is a little unclear though, as some sources say that Modulex split off right away, while others say this happened a few years later. Either way, the new business venture was in many ways a risky one. But with the minds and resources of the Lego group behind it, there was little doubt that Modulex could be a success. While Modulex bricks would take clear design cues from their Lego counterparts, they were anything but a simple copy. Lego bricks were designed around an unusual 5:5:6 ratio. Modulex was given equal width and height measurements, resulting in a clean 1:1:1 ratio. Better yet, Modulex had a base measurement of 5mm, which perfectly fit the 1:20 modeling scale used by many architectural firms. As an early product manual explained, the scale 1:20 is of particular interest within building, as the Modulex unit in this scale represents 10 centimeters, i.e. the basic module for the coordination of the dimensions in metric countries, and it approximately equals the 4-inch module used in the USA, Canada, and to a large extent in Great Britain. Of course, Modulex could represent any scale that was needed for a given project. But since it was largely designed for use at 1:20 scale, the product line was marketed under the name M20. Even the Modulex name itself refers to this scale. Each module represented 10 centimeters, with 10 being X in Roman numerals. Module X. The bricks themselves were held to the strict standards of quality the Lego group was known for. These were injection molded with the same ABS plastic used in Lego bricks, though the company experimented with PPO plastic as well. The bricks came in a variety of sizes, with most of these mimicking their larger counterparts. The notable exceptions to this were the 1x5 and 2x5 bricks. To this day, we've never gotten Lego bricks in these dimensions, so it's quite a surprise that Modulex had them as early as the 1960s. In Lego vernacular, plates are a third of the height of bricks. Tiles are the same as plates, but with a smooth surface on top. In Modulex, tiles were the height of full bricks, and they were available in a range of sizes. Plates were a very different story. Only 1x12 and 1x16 plates were ever produced. The reasoning for this actually ties back to an interesting aspect of the system. Modulex parts were meant to be cut apart and glued, giving architects even more versatility in their modeling. Modulex also offered a range of sloped bricks, which could be used for roofing or other angular detailing. To this day, none of these part designs have crossed over into the Lego product line. The closest analog is the 1x1 slope, which was added to the Lego system in 2004, though the Modulex version is proportionally taller. Also part of the Modulex lineup were special ridge bricks to help architects build at various angles. Nothing like this has ever been produced for the Lego system. For detailing, Modulex offered a few different horizontal and vertical bricks with different textures, as well as a wide range of windows and doors. None of these exact designs crossed over to the Lego system either, but similar parts have been produced over the years. A few stylized figurines were sold as well. These could either be glued together from existing parts, or they could be purchased pre-assembled. This was a full 15 years before the introduction of Lego minifigures in 1978. They of course served completely different purposes, and this is clear through their very different design styles. Another unique part of the Modulex toolset were the perforated foils, which were adhesive overlays that could be applied to studded surfaces. This allowed architects to add a thin layer of color coding to their models, which could either be used for details like grass or roads, or to highlight certain parts of the model for demonstration purposes. These foils came in a variety of colors, with specialized tools to cut and apply them to models. In the early 1960s, LEGO bricks were only offered in basic colors: white, black, gray, red, yellow, blue, green, and occasionally transparent. These bright colors worked great for toys, but Modulex would need some changes. The neutral colors of white, black, gray, and transparent were carried straight over from the LEGO system. Where it really gets interesting are the other 6 colors: ochre yellow, terracotta, teal blue, buff, olive green, and brown. Since Modulex was intended for professional model making, it needed colors that were more muted and natural in appearance. In an interesting case of reversed influence, buff was later carried over to the LEGO palette in 1981. Today it's more commonly known as tan, and has been a staple of the LEGO color range for decades. Modulex brown doesn't have a perfect match, but it's somewhat similar to LEGO dark tan, which was introduced in 1998. Terracotta doesn't have a perfect match either, but it's similar to LEGO medium nougat, which was introduced in 2010. Olive green wouldn't see an equivalent in LEGO form until 2012. These shades are very similar, but the Modulex version has a slightly cooler hue. Teal blue and ochre yellow have never really seen any close counterparts in the LEGO palette. This is pretty incredible, considering how many dozens of colors have come and gone over the years. All of this is to say, Modulex was truly designed from the ground up with clear intention. From its measurements to its colors, it stayed true to the philosophy that a product should be made of the highest quality. For an architect to construct a model in Modulex, the first step was to take the existing floor plans and convert them to a sketch on grid paper. This would plan out how the design would translate into bricks. Based on these sketches, the builder would then craft a custom building surface with studded base plates. These would be cut to size and glued onto a more sturdy platform like wood. Alternatively, Modulex offered transparent base plates which could be placed on top of the original drawings as a guide. Special considerations had to be made for complex details, like varying wall thicknesses and joints between floors. For windows and doors, builders could either use the prefabricated pieces or custom craft them to meet the needs of the model. Using the slopes and ridge bricks, builders could create the roof and other angled sections of the building as needed. But Modulex wasn't only used to model the final version of the building. It could be used at any stage in the design process, allowing architects to experiment with their ideas in 3 dimensions. The concept was solid, but there was a problem. The 1960s were a landmark time for the LEGO Group, with their products being sold internationally for the first time. LEGO was quickly becoming a household name, and the signature bricks were proving to be a hit with children all over the world. As a result, many architectural firms were skeptical of a product that so closely resembled a children's toy. Even if they could get their own employees on board, what would their clients and investors think? In an industry with so much focus on visual presentation, a LEGO-like product would be distracting at best, and at worst it could come across as unprofessional. Something to note here is that Modulex bricks were originally molded with the LEGO logo on the studs. To create some distance from the toy brand, the company started producing the bricks with M logos instead. There's some conflicting theories about when exactly this change was made, but it seems to have taken place over the span of a few years. But even if Modulex could get past the comparisons to LEGO, the timing was unfortunate for another reason too. A brick-based system was really only useful for specific architectural styles, and those styles were growing stale. Modulex worked great for older trends like modernism and brutalism, but a new wave of postmodern architecture was quickly emerging. This was purposely moving away from the boring, rigid styles of the past, and making use of unconventional shapes, angles, and colors. As LEGO enthusiast Barney writes, Modulex was built on the shaky foundation that were the conflicting and ever-changing architectural styles of the 1960s and 1970s. It was Modulex's adherence to a single architectural style, not so much through choice, but through the very nature of the construction system, that meant a shift in attitudes would undermine it. Another, less abstract problem for Modulex was its price tag. Compared to other modeling materials like cardstock or wood, the plastic bricks were quite a bit more expensive. The LEGO Group had built its reputation on not cutting corners, but their higher manufacturing costs meant that Modulex cost more than the products it was trying to replace. In the end, Modulex did see moderate success with a handful of architects, but it failed to revolutionize the industry as a whole. Despite this, the company still saw potential in the little bricks, so they went back to the drawing board to come up with some new ideas. After getting a lukewarm response from architects, Modulex was soon marketed for a slightly different purpose. Rather than being used for scale modeling, it could be used as more of a planning tool for laying out interior spaces. For example, the owners of a factory might need to figure out where to place all of their machinery. Drawings and diagrams could certainly help, but a physical model could give a much clearer vision of the space. This is where Modulex really started to show its value as a three-dimensional planning tool. The idea was to craft miniature objects within the building, which could be anything from machinery to office furniture. Then planners could easily move these pieces around in the space, experimenting with ideas until they found the best location. It was a flexible solution that was easy for anyone to use and understand. The same principles could be applied to larger scale layouts as well. For instance, you could lay out your company's property to help decide where to construct future buildings. Larger still, you could model the property in relation to the surrounding neighborhood. Modulex could achieve any level of detail that was needed, and unlike its first impressions, this time it was much better received. As the Sydney Morning Herald wrote, "The rapid acceptance of Modulex since its introduction can be illustrated by the fact that it is now used in a very large number of Danish factories, research institutes, and drawing offices as a visual aid to all kinds of planning." The system has now been launched abroad, because the basic idea behind Modulex has been to make a tool that could help to find the shortest way to increase productivity. Meanwhile, Modulex was gaining traction in classrooms as well. In 1967, educational leaders in the United States developed Modulex into a geography teaching tool. Schools in the US and Canada were provided with a box of Modulex bricks and geographic baseplates, and students were encouraged to experiment with concepts in city planning. As the Kenosha News wrote, "The students work in small groups, putting their knowledge to practical use by designing the typical city of Portsville. They go about constructing the city by appropriately placing colored Lego pieces, representing manufacturing areas, school districts, railroads, and other such assets to a community on a Modulex mapboard." Whether in the classroom or in the industrial sector, Modulex was an intuitive solution for a variety of layout planning needs. And this success was only the start of its multiple business uses over the next several years. While it was seeing new success as a layout tool, Modulex was also starting to be sold as a business planning tool in general. By putting a large studded surface on a wall, companies could use the bricks to build customizable charts, timelines, and workflows to manage their projects. This idea was marketed as the Modulex planning system. Perhaps you needed to track numerous aspects of a project, with different people responsible for various tasks. Maybe you needed to track sales figures month to month, or inventory levels in the warehouse, or customers' orders and shipment. Modulex could visualize these concepts in a way that was easy to understand and modify over time. The Colorado Springs Gazette-Telegraph wrote, "Modulex represents a breakthrough in charting, because the charts can reflect not only horizontal and vertical progress, but also the third dimension, since the components can be easily stacked on top of each other in color and size variations. To help serve this purpose, a new range of colors was introduced. The original colors were still offered, but these brighter options would give the charts more visual contrast. The new additions were orange, red, pink, pastel blue, pastel green, and lemon. Except for red, none of these colors were offered by the LEGO system at the time, though similar shades would be introduced in the coming decades. As a side note, even though red was a well-established LEGO color, the Modulex version was slightly more muted with a warmer hue, so they weren't an exact match. It's also worth pointing out that even bricks in these later colors were produced with both the LEGO and M logos. This could suggest that these colors were already introduced by the late 1960s, but there's not really a clear consensus on this. After years of mixed reception, Modulex really seems to find its footing with the planning system. As the 1960s gave way to the 70s, the brand gained widespread success in more than 25 countries around the world. Among their impressive list of customers were auto manufacturers like Daimler-Benz, Volkswagen, and Ford, airlines like Lufthansa, TWA, and Eastern, as well as NASA, Eastman Kodak, the Bank of England, and dozens of others. In the mid-1970s, the Modulex planning system spun off another product line called Plan Copy. This was a similar concept to the wall charts, but was designed in smaller sections that matched standard paper sizes. These segments could be removed from the wall and used in a photocopier. In this way, Modulex charts could be copied for use in meetings and reports, or faxed to people in a different location entirely. A new series of printed tiles were introduced for this use. These were mostly produced in white or bright colors so that the data would show up clearly in photocopies. Between Plan Copy and the planning system, Modulex was an especially useful business tool for its time. Computers were not yet capable of visualizing data on this scale, and certainly not in a way that everyone in the office could see and interact with together. It would still be many years before software could offer anything close to the versatility of Modulex. And even with this widespread success, the bricks still hadn't reached their full potential. With Modulex proving itself as an effective visual tool, perhaps it's not surprising that it expanded into another business need: architectural signage. Practically every business needed some kind of signage, whether it was a building directory, directional signs, or staff information. As the president of the US subsidiary described it, this means creating a communication system inside and outside a professional building, an office building, hospital, an airport, libraries, universities. We have many different markets. In the mid-1970s, the company launched a new product line called Interior 10. This offered sets of printed tiles with letters, numbers, and symbols, which could be built into professional signage. The company offered more traditional permanent signage as well, to help fill a wider range of needs for customers. The brick-built signage featured white Helvetica text on black tiles, which were produced in multiple sizes. By the 1980s, the company was offering a whole range of signage products. The Interior 20 and Interior 30 product lines offered more styles of modular signage, though these didn't use the brick system. The EDS 700 line included brick-built signage with integrated LCD displays. This was useful for rapidly changing information, like stock prices and currency exchange rates. The company also offered the Exterior 500 line for traditional outdoor signage. Modulex became so successful as a signage company that their products won awards from design organizations around the world, and their impressive customer base only continued to grow. The Racine Journal-Times wrote, "Modulex signs have found their way into hundreds of buildings, including First National Bank of Chicago, hotels operated by Marriott Corp., and buildings at O'Hare International Airport, Chicago, to name a scant few." But even as the company's focus shifted more heavily towards signage, Plan Copy and the planning system remained incredibly popular. And in fact, a third wave of colors was introduced for these product lines. The exact timing is unclear, but most sources agree that this happened sometime in the 1990s. Medium gray and charcoal gray were slight alterations to gray and black. The other new colors were reddish pink, light orange, medium blue, light yellow, aqua green, and violet. Sometime around this same era, new colors were introduced for the letter tiles as well. These have been dubbed tile gray, tile brown, and tile blue. These colors were unique to the tile sets and were not carried over to the bricks. In the early 1990s, the Modulex company merged with ASI Sign Systems, a global signage company based in North America. They continued to offer the brick system for several more years, but by the early 2000s, it was finally on its last legs. The new millennium brought a rapidly evolving tech market to all aspects of business. Computer software was more effective than ever at project management, data charting, and word processing. Modulex had adapted numerous times over the years, but the digital age was something it simply couldn't overcome. By 2004, the Modulex brick system was finally retired. With the company now fully focused on signage, their namesake product quickly faded into obscurity. It was a humble end for the little plastic bricks, which against all odds had remained a successful commercial product for over 40 years. In the years after Modulex was discontinued, the obscure bricks gained something of a cult following among LEGO fans. Few people knew of the product's existence, and even fewer knew its story, but it was a curious novelty for collectors. Then, a full decade after its retirement, Modulex actually had the opportunity to make a big comeback. In the summer of 2014, the Modulex company sold the production rights to a new startup company called Modulex Bricks. This group was headed by Anders Kirk Johansson, a great-grandson of Ole Kirk Christensen and grandson of Godfred. His new company was formed to resume production of Modulex bricks and make them widely available to the public for the first time. Fans of the system were thrilled by the news. As later reported by Brickset, production for Modulex Bricks AS was getting ready. Molds were being readied, test parts were being produced and given out to interested buyers. Then things went quiet in December. In January of 2015, it was announced that the LEGO Group had stepped in and bought out the Modulex Bricks company outright. As stated in the public announcement, it has been important for the LEGO Group owner family to ensure historic rights stay within the owner family. The potential to produce Modulex bricks has also been addressed, and there are no plans to manufacture Modulex bricks in the near future. The situation was confusing, since a member of the family had already been leading the project. So what was the problem? Well, it's a little complicated. Ownership of the LEGO Group itself had transferred from Ole to his son Godfred, then from Godfred to his son Kjeld. Other members of the family had sold off their shares in the company over the years. Anders, who was planning to revive Modulex, was from this part of the family tree, the part that had no direct ties to the LEGO fortune. Whether this was a case of protecting the intellectual property, or perhaps a simple family rivalry, the news of the cancellation was disappointing to fans to say the least. It's ironic too, since other companies have found success with miniature plastic bricks of their own. Brands like Nanoblock and Daiso Petite Block weren't necessarily inspired by Modulex, but they've shown that there's a niche customer market for this type of product. While Modulex is still pretty obscure today, dedicated fans continue to use the bricks to build new and visually inspiring models. And while Modulex and LEGO bricks are incompatible with each other, that hasn't stopped some people from finding creative ways to use them together, and achieve things that wouldn't be possible with either system alone. Likewise, many LEGO conventions have a Modulex enthusiast somewhere in the mix. You may even see Karen Murphy, who for many years has been leading the charge to preserve the Modulex story and educate others about this fascinating piece of history. Karen was actually a huge help to me during the production of this video. So if you catch her at a convention, be sure to check out her amazing collection of Modulex artifacts. I'd also recommend checking out her blog, MiniBricks Madness, if you're interested in some further reading. The original Modulex company itself is still very much alive today. It continues to be a global provider of architectural signage, branding, and project management services. Even though their focus has changed drastically since the 1960s, it's nice to see that they still take pride in their unique roots. And at the end of the day, those roots are what make the story so captivating. Modulex was always destined to live in the shadow of the Lego brick. But over the years, it proved its worth in more ways than even its creators probably imagined. And if nothing else, it almost certainly made work a little more fun.